Okay, so we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining in another amazing conversation with Karuna. And today I have a lovely person, a friend of mine, and also an amazing person from the HR fraternity, Viekas Khokha. He has been a friend, a colleague, and also someone whom I learn from a lot when it comes to HR fraternity. And today we're going to talk about something that both of us are very passionate about: inclusive work culture, and that is the key to innovation. So we're going to talk a bit about that and welcome all of you to this session today. So welcome Vikas to our session.
Thank you. Thanks, Karuna, for calling me here. And I think this is an opportunity to reach out to the audience, which is beyond your own ecosystem. So I think
Absolutely.
it's an excellent opportunity I'm taking, uh, I'm encashing on.
We all need to connect with each other in these times when technology becomes a medium where we can stay connected to each other. So, thank you so much for accepting the invite for doing this. And without wasting time, let's just move ahead and talk a bit more about you. Vikas, tell us a bit more about you. Where do you come from? And also the milestones that you've achieved in your career. I'm sure the audience is waiting to know more about you.
Thanks for giving me this opportunity to speak about myself. I think I scale myself back into my roots, which are from Punjab, and obviously a Delhi-based family that I belong to, and have a small family of my parents along with me and my sister, who's married in Delhi. My passion for photography takes me on with my life. My passion for traveling takes me on with life, and my passion for cooking. So I think cooking, traveling, and photography, which really takes me on. Uh, Even in these times, I think I reflect back on my old photographs, my old places of travel. I can try, new cooking hobbies, around that. So if you really look at my career is divided into three portions. When I started my career in sales, and in sales, I could, connect with a lot of customers, develop relationships, build more revenue. I thought, I was good at coaching my people to be able to be more effective, and I started coaching my own people, coaching people who were not in my own team. I realized why I can't impact organization from the top level, and I was fortunate enough where I was in Airtel. They gave me an opportunity to move as an HR leader, and then I think there was no looking back. I took on my own roots within HR, understanding processes, policies, system, and then moved on in my various assignments to lead HR portfolios here and there. So I started working more on culture, as an HR leader, and I think culture became one of the very pretty subjects of mine. Let me tell you, for an HR leader, it's most tough. It's easier to get policies, processes, difficult to get culture, difficult to even
Absolutely.
define culture. So I think the journey went on defining culture to, you know, uh, how an inclusive workplace could look, and I think it's all part of that big elephant, which is culture in the room, which we need to plug out. So I think this has been a snapshot of my journey. It's been very, very exciting. Based in Delhi, uh, I feel that I'm very fortunate to be in the heart of Delhi, very close to heart of Delhi, and then travel all around Delhi. So I think this has been my journey.
Very interesting. So, moving from sales to being an HR person where you're learning nitty gritties about human resources to reaching a level where, as a leader, you're strategizing or working towards building cultures. What keeps you excited? What drives you to do what you're doing? From sales to being a leader, people-oriented leader. What drives you to do that?
So I think biggest drive which came in from sales to HR, and there were some common points. Like the points were like your own relationship with your customers. So you consider all your employees and employee base as your customers, and
Hmm.
start building relationship from that level. You bring in value. That's why customer pays you, right? So
Mm.
similarly, you bring in value to your employees. So I never consider my employees out of my customer domain. So first, they are my customer. Second is setting processes so that we have a defined timeline to serve them. What I feel is don't keep things as far as possible in gray. Try to bring in black and white and close that loop with them to be able to ensure that they you are serving the end user. So that's why I never keep it to the customer who's sitting across. I keep end user in mind, coming from sales. Who's my consumer? Who's actually paying to the organization and the value chain is flowing to me. So I think keeping that end user in mind gives me more close relationship with my customers, which my internal customers, which is employees. So I develop more good relationship with them. I travel. I'm one HR who's mostly traveling. I think I'm traveling, meeting them in the field. I don't meet them in boardrooms. So I love to be across them. And today's unprecedented times, I am also trying to get everybody on the Zoom calls and still coming across them. I think that whole connect with the team is something which is taking me from which is very commonly taking me from sales to HR with that strength in mind, even as I'm leading HR today.
Yeah, I know that quality. I know about you because I know this that the first time we met, none of us met in the cities that we stay in. So, the fact that we were traveling and meeting you specifically, I know you. I remember you telling me that you're from Pune to you moving to Bombay to meet your colleagues in various parts of the country. So I think being there with people, um, understanding that. Who is my beneficiary and how I can make the beneficiary's life better. I think that is what just drives you, and I think I respect you for that as well. And I'm sure those who are listening to this surely value the fact that as a leader, it is so important that we understand that who are our beneficiaries and how how we are making their lives better at the end of the day. So thank you, Vikas, for sharing that. And I'm sure this is a great value add for people who are watching this and might be listening to this
And
later.
just to add a word on that, when you travel and when you be with the people, you carry back a lot of learnings,
Yes,
and which you can't sometimes assimilate sitting inside the room yourself. I think, and the similar philosophy is followed by your teams then, because they are your arms and legs. So I think what you reap, what you sow is what you reap, right? So you sow this kind of culture, and that is imbibed by your team members down the line, and helps you to
absolutely.
have a better connect as an HR with the
Yeah,
employees.
absolutely. And I think that gives us, I'm an HR professional as well, and I understand that. And I feel it personally in my career journey, it gave me a lot of business understanding, which ultimately helped me to create better, culture and policies and strategies which were more aligned, people strategies which are more aligned to business as well.
Sure.
Okay, interesting. So let's move to another thought that comes to my mind as I'm listening to you. You've been talking about building inclusive culture, and as a leader, being at that strategic level, you've been working at various. You worked for various organizations as well. So, are there any specific milestones that you would like to talk about, where you can share about how that philosophy or principle helped shift the organization's performance? How did it lead to innovation and how did it lead to business performance? Any thought, example around that?
So I think my experience ranges from an automation, office automation industries to telecommunications, and then going to healthcare, and now to fertilizer and chemical. I think these 4 5 industries, what I've felt is, I think the biggest challenge for any leader today is to develop a culture where there's no bias. And I think creating a non-biased approach is the bigger challenge than creating those policies and processes to be able to drive it. So what I realized was, and let me define a little bit of biasness also to you. I feel that biasness comes in with a very basic concept of communication. We sometimes don't know what we are communicating. I have seen people getting very uncomfortable when you are talking, when you're meeting them in their personal space, when you're having informal get-togethers, when you have offsites. So I think that sensitivity has to be created around people in the organizations, that what they need to speak, how they need to portray it, and what needs to be spoken and what could not be spoken, right? And this is something which is an edge, I feel, that if we cross, we have much bigger results to carry, and I remember, some of the people never used to be part of those fun events or bonding events. So employee bonding was being compromised because people felt that when you go to those events, people get little easy and they can speak anything. So I think right from announcing culture sensitization workshops, ensuring that right sensitization brings in to people uh, through coaching and guidance, not through those posh programs, or not taking a stick in your hand. That way you can't drive culture. You could develop a better employee base. That means people would be larger talent would be able to join you. So we could see that not only talent retention, that means high pot retention of high potential talent in the organization, but also attracting good quality talent from the market helped us to scale up our productivity from 10% to 60%. And I'm talking of Airtel,
Wow.
where we worked on, and Airtel was a classic example. We were already market leaders, right? But for us to retain our talent, to be not moving to competition, or also to attract talent to join us, which is top talent in the market, right?
Mm.
We needed to have a very sound culture philosophy. So I think
Absolutely. Yes.
that
Mm.
sensitization helped us to get better people to produce us and help creating a pipeline for future leadership.
Mm.
So that was a very important component of an ROI. I also talk of my experience at Zimmer when I was there. And Zimmer is into healthcare. Uh, we looked at the gender, creating more gender inclusive workplace so that you can have better gender ratio across the organization, so that we could have larger workforce working towards the goals that we had. We tried getting some policies and practices, especially the culture of women's safety, right? And that
Mm.
was one of the issues which we pointed out, and we ensured our policies are completely foolproofing that. And
Mm.
dramatically, we moved 11% to 19% on our gender ratio, which helped us not only to get better talent from the market that we were not attracting earlier, because
Mm.
uh, those women, that population was not joining us, but we could get a good workforce when we went to campuses and hired very bright females from the campuses who could help us to sustain the career paths through our larger leadership domain. And very happy to say that about 50% of the women were there in leadership in the
Amazing.
organization.
Nice. Nice.
When I towards the end, and I think we had a immensely good culture of people feeling very safe. People feel they're completely supported by the organization. I think those policies and culture also helped us to create better ROIs towards the end of the organization by assimilate this kind of talent.
Okay.
So these are the few
So,
examples through which we
yeah.
could help organizations to develop better productivity and better business results basis the culture development on inclusive.
I think this is very, very interesting, and I should say a commendable effort that you put into creating a culture like that. I have a googly question for you, Vikas. You talked about that creating a non-biased approach is challenging. You also talked about that, when we talk about inclusive culture, we talked about, high potential people, retention of them. We also talked about women, gender, and, creating a culture, better culture for all of that kind of a setup. In my opinion, is inclusion limited to just the gender scenario, or is it more than that? And also, another question, which is I want to ask is, when we talk about a non-biased approach, do you agree that to 100% we can have a non-biased understanding? Because as human beings, we are brought up in a certain way. So do you see that when we do talk about there is so much of diverse aspect. It could be diversity in thoughts, diversity not just from a gender, diversity in culture, geography, age groups, and even beyond all of that. There's so much around it. So do you think that can organizations create a non-biased approach, and if so, any insights around that?
So I think first, sorry if I took the example of only the gender-based diversity, but I think my bias when I mentioned was not limited to gender. And Karuna, this happens that we have biasness towards language, we have biasness towards the regional presence, location sometimes,
Hmm.
sometimes even the marital status of a
Yeah.
person, sometimes and sometimes definitely related to gender, not limited to male and female, but going to other genders, right?
Yeah.
And also biasness towards being fresh versus experience, biasness towards industry exposure. So I
Hmm.
need only people in my industry because they can only do well, right? And I
You do
limit my
that.
talent within the industry.
Yes.
So I think different kind of biasnesses you have, and these biases stop you from exploring. That means it's a long term versus short term. So it becomes so short sightedness that your productivity or your overall vision cannot be achieved if you are if you are limited to that space. So, what you need to do is you need to first create that sensitivity around people that this is biasness because they don't even know. When we come from our backgrounds that we are brought up, we that builds with us, and we think that this is right. Whatever I'm saying is right, right? And we had a simple philosophy yesterday. I had circulated also that it's okay for you to have opinion which is different from others, but what is not okay that when you humiliate others because of that difference, right? And I was really connected to that, and this is what the philosophy of our whole culture changes. So we create
Hmm.
change management across the organization by creating culture champions, the people who you feel would help in driving that change with you. You help them train and make that those people as your agents in the organization, and then slowly and steadily in day-to-day walks of life or workspaces, you start making gradual changes through them. It's very important to have allies for you to drive this change across the organization. So I think wherever I have made a culture change, like in medical devices, there were a mindset that people outside the medical devices industry cannot work. And let me tell you, when I left the organization, 60% of people were from outside industry. So I think in my own way, I could take help of those people who were my change agents, who were actually pushing the needle, right? And I took their help and assimilate that change across the organization. So that was a big learning that you cannot do it alone, but you need to have a partner,
Yeah.
who thinks like you to be able to drive that.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting, very interesting. Now, let me just quickly acknowledge our audience as well, Vishal, Vikas, and thank you, Sham Sundar, for joining in, and thank you, Anbarasu, Ankit. Thank you. Hello to all of you. Good afternoon as well, and of course, it's a fabulous conversation going on, Anbarasu. So Rahul has a question for you, Vikas. He's talking about what do you think the role of HR will be in the future, especially in this current scenario?
So I would say HR plays a very important role in deriving the culture and even if you want to set up an inclusive culture, HR is a very important role. Why I would say, I have 3 points to say that. First, as an HR, you need to be resilient to all those anti thoughts which come, and you have to keep pushing it. It's not easy. Sometimes your leader sitting across you pushes the thoughts and you tend to say yes, okay, I agree, to close the situation. I think you have to be resilient enough to keep pushing. And the smile on your face, Karuna, can clearly say that you also experienced this, right? Where you had your leader pushing in, and you had you had to generate that enough courage or resilience. Resilience doesn't come like that. You need to have good data points. So I think as an HR leader, you need to do a lot of research in the market, get those data points. I think in our insights language, we have done that. The
Yeah.
the cool blue energy helps us, and which is getting more analytics and data, more factual information on the table, helps you to build that resilience with the leaders. My third point is about the human touch. Now, everything is in P&L as profit and loss, and the fine defined statements in terms of numbers. I think that human element, that I would say the softer element, which is very hard to deal with, I think has to be brought in you. How do you bring in that sensitivity of people across to those leaders and those change managers is very important, and I think HR can do that. When you do your one-on-one meetings, when you do your meetings in group, a focus group discussion, you bring in that human element out, right? And bring it across to the people, that how that human element also has to dealt with, not only the P&L.
Yeah.
So I think these are 3 points I took is very important for an HR leader, and that's why HR plays an important role. Otherwise, without HR also, that P&L could have been managed. But
Yeah.
when this part is added to it, definitely one leads to compounded growth for organization, but also helps them develop that employer brand, right? I would say an employer brand, why people would like to be associated with you, that employee value proposition, why people from outside would like to come and join you, why your own people will like to continue with you for long. So this is what the role of HR is. I hope I could answer your question.
Yeah, and I think in the current scenario, with shifting, though so much of change happening, paradigms shifting, I think these qualities would just keep us going, because one needs to be resilient in whatever situation. As an HR person, we need to be humanly connected, whether using technology, whether whatever personal touch we can give, but also be data oriented, because that's the balance it brings in, because we can't just be um, of course the human touch is important, but there need to be some balance when it comes to practical insight as well. So thank
And
you,
that
Vikas.
balance, Karuna, would be brought by the HR leader,
Yes, yes,
by bringing that fact, because no other element in the organization would do that but HR.
absolutely. Okay, so Sanjay, thank you. Good afternoon for joining in as well. Sushant seems to have a question. Do you think this the right time for companies to come forward and hire the best talents and prepare for the future, or should companies wait and watch the situation and be P&L conscious?
Uh, Sushant, nice to see you here. Uh, Sushant, the challenge for an HR leader is sustainability and succession, right? And when you look at an organization, look at critical positions, right? You also look at critical talent, right? So you need to have a pipeline externally and internally ready for those very critical positions and your critical talent, in order to maintain that pipeline and then ensure continuity and sustainability of an organization. It's very important for you to keep mapping the best talent in the market and keep scoring on that, because that's where you grow. Suppose you as an organization decide to grow, say, 5 times in the next 5 years, right? And that's your vision as an organization. If you have a current set of people, uh, they will not suffice that need. They may not. You need to have a futuristic talent to be able to bridge that gap of 5x, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that talent basis the competencies that you define would be different from what it is within X or 5x, will help you to gauge what kind of talent you need from the market. And unless you map that talent, you may not be able to achieve that 5x with the current set of people. a current set of talent, not underscoring the current talent, but ensuring that your future vision is achieved. So it's very important for you to keep mapping that talent, and it should be an ongoing exercise to take a mix of high pot talent in your own company to grow, plus imbibe people from outside. They come from different cultures, and that's where inclusivity also comes in. You assimilate people from different cultures to come together to be able to achieve what you have strived towards as a part of your vision. I hope I could answer your question, Sushant. Talking of culture, also, I think it's not an easy task, because competencies you can always list down into 5 or 6 competencies that helps you to achieve what you want to. But as far as culture is concerned, I think you have to list down what are the elements that are touch points in your organization, which helps you to define culture. And there could be a very focused approach in developing that culture, also measuring it when you get people from outside. So there should be a competency based assessment. There should also be a culture based assessment for people to come in. In fact, Karuna, that's the way you can actually measure how you could get more inclusive culture from outside when you're hiring.
Absolutely.
So
Makes a
we
lot of
lost you
sense.
for a few seconds in between, and I was conversing with Shashank, just exemplifying on the question that he asked.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. Thank you so much for doing that. And I think just my 2 cents on that, I do believe that organizations are ultimately a cluster of people. It's people who run organizations. So, when we talk about having best of the talents, is where we are actually bringing in the qualities, characteristics, and leaders who can actually drive an organization to high performance, and also create innovation in that organization. And I think that's the topic of our session as well today, that inclusive work culture is, and of course that means that having best of the talent and also preparing for future, putting it all together is going to help us, and having a relevant conversation, relevant balance in the organization is going to help us build that innovation that we're looking for.
And also, just complementing on your statement, I think PNL is just an output.
Yes.
Transformation is the journey which leads to that. And consciously, I think all leaders should know that people in their organization are leading that transformation with them. Only then you can submit to that PNL, that you are defined as a part of your target.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sushant. I'm sure you found some value. So, last question for you, Vikas. I know we need to quickly move ahead, but last question. As an appraisal process, we see balanced scorecard as measured in most organizations. How to bring equal focus on honesty, sincerity, and integrity, which remain biased? That's
I
an
think a very
interesting.
interesting question, Arvind. Very, very interesting question. I was deliberating for last few months on this, and then we defined some kind of COTs for our leaders. I think it has to be led from the top first. COTs, that means critical operating tasks for the leaders, have to be led from the top. So first you define the leadership, how they need to be measured, and then everybody else will follow. I think balance scorecard is just a word, I would say. We talk of people, processes, financials, and all those 4 quadrants in that. But most important part is some of the other pieces that you mentioned comes from your values. So when you define or redefine or redesign or introduce your values, I think it's very important for you to understand why you exist as an organization, then accordingly define your values, help leaders to showcase the behaviors which helps you to say that those values are being followed. I think it's very important to measure that, to be able to assimilate those 3 points of honesty, integrity, etc., which are beyond that 4 quadrant balance scorecard.
Yeah.
So even your appraisal page, to an extent, should have those behavior measurement criteria or components for leaders to be able to assimilate that. I think the organizations which have been able to come closer to measuring their own values, not keeping that just as a symbol, have been able to get better out of people and measure the culture of an organization through their own leaders and people better than other organizations. So I think values becomes very important part. I think what we need to do is as leaders, we need to keep rethinking about how we transform our values also. Because a lot of organizations have values defined, say, 5 years back. We're continuing with the same. Some people have forgotten about it. Some people still remember the names, right? But I think
Yeah,
all we need refueling, right? So I think that refueling in that
absolutely.
every year as we see our new dimensions that we need to grow, it's very important for us to take it forward in that fashion. So I think typically in this, I'm also crossing this journey, helping the organization to think through how do they measure culture and starting from the top.
Sure. And I think my personal experience, and there are statistics around it also, that those organizations who've created measurements around leadership behaviors have been able to create more innovation in organizations. I have worked for organizations like that, and I absolutely believe, and there are statistics that prove that also in a great way. So thank you so much, Vikas, for adding so much of value, and I'm sure the audience found it of great interest as well. And this was an amazing conversation. So before you end, a quick comment on your feedback about conversations with Karuna and anything that you would love to add more about.
Karuna, we could have carried on for another 2 hours and still got some questions and kept answers, but I think I found this conversation very, very, first of all, very friendly because you are a friend, and secondly, I think very conclusive in terms of how we still derive culture despite all those P&L pressures that we are in. I think somewhere we need to step back and think about it because in the day-to-day rut and operations we can't. So I think this the platform that you've created helps us to step out, of our regular work and think about certain things which are very important, but they
And
don't seem
reflect.
crucial when you're sitting at your workplace. Yeah. So I think this is please carry on this journey with such topics, which are normally not part
So
of the
thank you
boardroom
so
discussion.
much. Thank you so much for adding value.
I can see your screen frozen for sometimes, so I'm waiting for you to come back.
So thank you so much, Vikas, for yet another support, and thank you for being at our show. I know we need to wrap it up for now. We will be back again with yet another amazing session for all of you. So stay tuned in with Conversations with Karuna. And thank you so much, Vikas, for being here.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Wish you all the best to everyone and have a lot of safe life to them and their families.
Absolutely. Thank you so
Thanks.
much. Thank you.